This woman is trying to scam you. Now, obviously I'm being a bit dramatic with that statement, but it is actually true. Moreover, if you know what this is, there's a decent chance that you've been told an inaccurate myth about it. It's kind of like the myth that commas denote pauses. They don't. They actually serve a half dozen different purposes. But they do sometimes show up where people just happen to pause while speaking, and that gets used as a teaching tool when children are first learning to write. Over time, something that's really just an occasional coincidence gets repeated as a rule, and the more interesting truth gets overlooked.
Get over it!
The object that I've been waving around is a cameo. You may end up seeing one of them in the real world soon, because cameos have been slowly growing in popularity lately. They're usually worn as brooches, earrings, bracelets, signet rings, or pendants, and they often feature an image of a woman in profile. That brings us to the myth that I mentioned. A lot of people will tell you that the woman is Queen Victoria, but the truth is just that cameos were incredibly popular in Victorian England. Queen Victoria herself loved cameos, but she didn't go around wearing one of her own head. As for who the woman actually is, well, it depends on the cameo. Queens and princesses do show up, but there are also goddesses, mythical figures, some guy, and even entire scenes. There are thousands of different subjects, and there are equally many ways to identify them. But a lot of the time, said subject is just an anonymous woman. Unfortunately, it's one of those nameless faces who's trying to trick you out of your money. See, this cameo is actually a fake. This is a real cameo from the late 1800s. It was carved from a piece of helmet shell, and I mention that because carving is actually a requirement for authentic cameos. They can be made of almost anything, but regardless of the medium, they need to be sculpted by cutting away material where two colors meet, leaving a raised image behind. If you just mold one color of plastic on top of another, it isn't actually a cameo. Put another way, if a cameo is an original painting, then this is a print. And since they're mass-produced, a lot of fake cameos bear a striking resemblance to one another. That isn't the only way to recognize a fake, though. If you look at an antique cameo through a loupe, you'll be able to see evidence that it was carved by hand. Fake cameos won't show those telltale marks, and many of them will have little bubbles or places where the plastic oozed around during casting. There's also a specific luster and a transparency to shell that resin can't completely mimic. So even if the growing market gets flooded with fakes, the real ones will still stand out. If you're interested in cameos, then I hope that you find one of your own. I also hope you remember that despite the myth and the occasional coincidence, commas do not denote pauses.